and a friend to so many, because he's never met a stranger. He's a husband, a father, a grandfather with a strong faith. And yes, he loves basketball. He's a Cleveland native, and as Steve Heiser shared a reference, he holds the highest points scored, 51, in a boys' high school state championship. And as Clark said, it's only once a year they get a chance to break that record. He played basketball for The Ohio State University for 3 years, and then left after his junior year to go on to the NBA with the Indiana Pacers. He had 3 fabulous seasons, and the last 2 troubled by a chronic knee issue that forced his early retirement. But Clark, knowing the value of an education, came back to Ohio State, got his marketing degree in 1996. Clark, for over 25 years now, 1993 to be specifically, is the extraordinary top CBS network college basketball analyst and commentator. I had the joy of seeing him on TV yesterday. I was relieved that he was here today. And he does go straight to the airport from here for his next engagement. But in the Rotary spirit of service above self, serving and philanthropy are important to Clark as well. Using his time, talents, and treasures, he supports many organizations where one or more of those 3 talents, time, and treasure. American Red Cross, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Ron McDonald House, United Way, Athletes in Action, One Heart Project, and he's been 9 years, since 2010, on the board of the Ohio State University Board of Trustees. Are you ready for some March Madness? Let's get up for my friend Clark.
Thank you, President Robertson. Appreciate it. Can a visitor or a guest do happy dollars? Yes. Okay. So I've got, before I get started, there's a minimum for a visitor. You have to do 5. So I'll do 20. I'll do 20 happy bucks, and I'll just put it right here. And I do that for a lot of reasons, but primarily because as I was sitting looking at this, Be the Inspiration, President Robertson and I talked last week. He kind of gave me some bullet points to ponder and pray about before my presentation today. But I'm looking at this inscription, and then I'm listening to what takes place prior to me coming to speak, and I'm seeing this in all of you as Rotarians. So my happy bucks are for you all being the inspiration through this club, through your philanthropy, through your service. So you deserve a round of applause for yourselves. I've been given a 25-minute shot clock, and I am pretty consistent in trying to come in at or below the shot clock when I have an opportunity to share. And I'm grateful. I heard a Baptist minister once say, I'm glad to be wherever I be. And I'm glad to be here to have a chance to talk a little March Madness, but I'm going to circle my way back to this with a little story as I close my remarks, and then open it up to questions that you might have. How many actually are either casual, moderate, or rabid college basketball fans? Some of you just don't care about the game at all. And understood, clearly, no problem. Diversity comes in a lot of different forms and fashions. But most of you are. So this is one of the most exciting and joy-filled times of the year for me, and has been for decades. And I give thanks to God through Christ for that. To have work that's so fun and so different and so exciting and so well-paying and so seasonal, it only could be God. I go hard from October when I start preparing until we crown a champion, which is later than normal this year. It will be April 8th when the celebration commences for the national champion in men's Division I basketball. But on April 9th, They don't call me, and I don't call them. And we reconvene in December. I start preparing in October, but we don't reconvene officially, my employer, CBS, and me, until December. We're more than a sports network. So our basketball coverage isn't wall to wall like ESPN is from November until the tournament starts. We ramp up the first or second week of December and go every weekend, and then have a crescendo of basketball in the month of March once the tournament starts. So this is actually, I like to tell people I go from 45 to 60 to no speed limit. And I'm in the no speed limit zone now. As conference tournaments begin this week, tickets will be punched to the tournament. Teams will find themselves as one of the 68 by virtue of automatically qualifying by winning their conference championships. For those of you that watch, you'll get tired of seeing me on that one-way box. Because I'll be there, as I like to say, from daylight to daylight. Because we start, once that tournament kicks in, on Thursday of the first weekend. We meet at 10:30, we're on the air at noon, and we don't shut it down until well after midnight. And then it's Groundhog Day on Friday. And then we're down to 32 teams on Saturday and Sunday. And those days are 10 to 11 hours instead of 12 to 14. And then we're down to the Sweet 16 after 4 days of just unbelievable excitement, twists and turns, human interest stories, hopefully buzzer beaters, hopefully some of the Cinderella stories. And then as we idle down to the 16, it gets a little bit of a different pace, a little more moderate, and then it ramps back up for the Final Four. I've been married to my bride, Rosie. We're coming up on 36 years of marital blessing and challenges and bliss and joy. And she is amazed that she's been able to have just about some of her wants and all of her needs met through somebody who's never really had a real job. Because I went from playing basketball for a living to talking about it for a living. And it's one of the greatest joys to have one's aptitudes, abilities, gifts, passions aligned with what you do to make a living. And it's been that way for me since I was 21 years old. And I am so grateful, so thankful to be able to do what God allows me to do in the game of basketball. I can never, ever give basketball what it's given me. It paid for my college education. It exposed me to people and opportunities that I wouldn't have encountered otherwise. It continues to provide a platform and a way to make a living for my family and to have a positive impact on others. And while the work I do is public for those who follow basketball, we all have a similar sphere of avocation, occupation, platform, impact. And it's important that we use it fully from a place of gratitude and desiring to be a difference maker. So I'm grateful. Basketball has given me that. I would ask, though, as you watch, I get the pleasure and privilege and challenge of working with Kenny Smith, Charles Barkley, and Ernie Johnson. Greg Gumbel and I have been together since 1998, longtime partners. Seth Davis has been there since probably 2003. So there's tremendous chemistry, great relationship. The Turner guys, Kenny and Charles and Ernie, came aboard in 2011. I've been teamed with those guys in the studio since 2014. So this will be our 6th season together. It's absolute joy. It's fun, but it's work. when Charles shows up. It's work because he's so funny, and he's so unscripted, and he's so unpredictable, but he's also genuinely authentic and an unbelievable people person. I've learned to be even more that way because of being around him. He's extremely gracious with his time and his celebrity for others. And that's a valuable lesson. But for those of you that are watching, if it looks like fun, it's because it is. We're having a great time. And another reason I'm thankful for what I get to do. How do you practice this? How does that show up on a day-to-day basis? What does that look like? Be the inspiration. I think we all would have an idea, and actually many of us have practiced it. You as Rotarians, you as men and women in the community, leaders in your particular companies, in your households, have practiced this. But sometimes it's nice to have an illustration that embodies what something looks like or can be. And in my morning reading today, I was reminded of what Be the Inspiration looks like. And I just want to read an excerpt from this book that I'm reading. It's called The Rest of God, Embracing the Sabbath Rest in Disposition, Attitude, Heart. And the story is from a movie that many of you may be familiar with. And I watched this movie, and as I did this morning, I did the same thing when I first saw the movie. It brought me to a place of tears when this scene unfolded in the movie. Mr. Holland's opus is the story of a man with a magnificent ambition. He wants to be a great composer, but he still has to pay the bills, so he and his young wife move to a small town where he teaches high school music strictly for the money. All the while, he works on his masterpiece, his opus, laying the ground for his real calling. The plan is to teach for a few years, then step into his destiny. But life keeps intruding. 1 year folds into 2, into 5, into 15. And then one day, Mr. Holland is old, and the school board shuffles him out for early retirement. He packs his desk. His wife and grown son come to fetch him. Walking down the school's wide, empty hallways, he hears a sound in the auditorium. He goes to see what it is. It's a surprise. Hundreds of his students from his years of teaching, many now old themselves, dozens of his colleagues, both current and former, hundreds of friends, fans, well-wishers. The room is packed. All have gathered to say thank you. An orchestra is there made up of Mr. Holland's students through the years. They've been preparing to perform Mr. Holland's opus, the composition that over 4 decades he hammered out and tinkered with, polished, discarded, recovered, reworked, never finished. They play it now. But of course, he knows, everybody knows, his opus is not the composition. His real opus, his true life's masterpiece, stands before him, here and now. Not the music. It's all these lives. Men and women, young and old, black and white, rich and poor. His life is touched. It's all these people, his passions and convictions have helped and shaped. It's all that's being formed in the crucible of life's interruptions. That's being the inspiration. That's giving of yourself, first to God, because to me all generosity flows from the great gift giver of all, who is God. And as we give to him, then we're able and empowered to give to others. And influence, in mentoring, and advice, and sharing and caring and love. I close before I open it up to questions because this is such a vivid reminder of something the Apostle Paul says in the Bible. He says, those things that are true and noble and right, those things that are pure and lovely and admirable, those things that are excellent and praiseworthy, think on those things. And if you can't connect what I just shared from the Bible with that phrase, you're missing something. That's what you all are about. That's what we're all called to be about. Being a Rotarian is a platform, a wonderful platform. But that's a universal and timeless principle for being the inspiration, for making an impact, for being a Mr. Hollins Opus. If you're so inclined, enjoy the madness of March. And in the midst of the madness, be the inspiration right where God has put you with your passions, your gifts, your opportunities. So the floor is open. I've got about 7 minutes in my shot clock before I open up the questions. Actually, Tab, you want to come back? You sure? Is that all right? Okay. Yep.
Yes, I'm going to start with this real fast.
Okay.
I traveled too much for a living, and I almost didn't make it today. But I just, I'm going to throw in a happy buck to, I'm so excited to have been here today and not missed your speech, which was one of the finest speeches I've seen. You used the term "be the inspiration" quite a bit. You are an inspiration. I'm a fellow Buckeye and an alumni. I'm proud to see you represent that in all forms, not just as a basketball superstar, but also as a human superstar. And you paid us a nice compliment. I just want to make sure that I return that favor.
Now I get to throw in a happy buck.
Hey, if we're going to start throwing these bucks, now let's make them 5.
Oh, that's yours. That's yours.
I know. Why did you say that?
It was an inspiration.
That's what I'm talking about. Here we go.
But I was reflecting, sometimes inspirations come from whole teams. And when we are at our best in this club, we are as a team. Could you talk about maybe one of the most inspirational basketball teams you've had a chance to see?
Wow, great question. I play on a great team at CBS, quite honestly, and it's not just the folks that you see on the air, it's all of the folks that are behind us, our researchers, our technical folks, producers and directors, and we have a fabulous team, great leadership. In terms of basketball, I've been part of some really good teams, and I've seen some terrific teams over the years. Probably if I just kept it with the alma mater, Ohio State, the Ohio State University, I think back to the 1999 team, Scooney Penn and Michael Redd, I think Jason Singleton. That was a team that had one NBA player really, and that was Michael, who ended up having a phenomenal career as an NBA player. Scooney was right on the cusp, had a tremendous career overseas. A couple of the other guys, I think, too, spent time overseas. But that was a team that really was nicely tied together. And the sum of the whole elevated it to a Final Four run that was quite surprising in some ways. So that was one of the great teams that I saw. At the pro level, I was around a number of outstanding Indiana Pacers teams, intimately, because I worked for the organization as a radio and TV broadcaster, spent some time in the front office, spent 20 plus years covering the team as a broadcaster. So I was around some really phenomenal teams with Reggie Miller and those guys. So I wouldn't highlight one team other than that 99, but there have been several in my interaction. And I like to speak to teams that I've been around a little more. But some of the championship teams, you can obviously see those ingredients of being tied together and the chemistry matching and sometimes even exceeding the talent and helping teams go to really great heights. Appreciate the question, and thanks for the happy bucks. Well, you guys are thanking them for the happy bucks, right? Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Clark, I've got one. What's your feeling about the length of time with the official replays that's happening right now?
Well, like many things, we tend to always focus on the extremes. Quite honestly, for all of the replay reviews that take place, and there are hundreds and hundreds, actually thousands of them when you talk about the number of games, 353 Division I teams, whatever number of games that is, it's a small number, it's still too long. I've proposed in jest and seriously there should be a shot clock on replays. Now, you want to get it right, but just because we have great technology, there still is a God and there's still some things that we're going to be human about. As a matter of fact, I tell anybody, if you want to officiate and not make a mistake, then you try it. Or if you want to commentate and not mess up somebody's name or get a fact wrong, then you do it. So the human element is there, but to your question, I'm sorry, I don't want to drag on, but it's too long. It's too long in many cases. And part of it is the hyper scrutiny that the officials know they're getting on social media, from the armchair fan, from whoever. So they're committed to get it right, no matter how long it takes. And again, it's few and far between, but it is too long. It is too long.
The Buckeyes going to be in your field at 68?
I've got them there now. They need to take care. I think, and I'm not a bracketologist by any means. I actually don't even look at the brackets until, I don't look at them really at all. When we come on the air for our show, when we reveal the bracket, that's the first time I've seen it. I mean, years ago I would look at it because we get it we get it earlier than the TV show starts. But there were years ago I would look at it just to see who got in, who didn't. But for the last 10 or 11 years, I don't even look at it. I just kind of let it unfold, and I watch it when you guys are watching it as fans, because it's just more fun that way. But I think the Buckeyes are in decent shape. One more win could solidify it if it happened to be against Wisconsin, and I think it would probably anchor it. Yeah. I'm sorry, right here, behind you.
Tell us your projection, Clark, on the future of college basketball and football players relative to compensation.
Oh man, this is a great question, and I think the NCAA is up against it with some of these lawsuits that are still pending in court around, not payment, but the amateurism model. It just can't stand up consistently going forward against antitrust litigation. I think we're headed there, so hopefully there'll be some mitigating factors where the NCAA can start to try to take hold of that and reshape it, but there's going to be some movement in reshaping the amateurism model. Cost of attendance is one part of it where it includes everything that is required to be in school. My wife and I, we were fortunate, all three of our children were scholarship student athletes in college, volleyball and basketball, and yet we were in a position still to supplement some of their college expenses because the scholarship is fantastic. Don't get me wrong, our kids graduated with degrees debt-free. That's a big, big blank deal. It really is. But the cost still involves some additional incidentals that should be covered by the scholarship, because as a student scholarship athlete, and it's not just football, basketball, when you're on scholarship, school and your sport are your job. There's not much room or time for much else. So everything should be covered in that. So I think we're going to move. I don't know how it's going to play out, but there's going to be some reshaping of that amateurism model, either by force of law or by well, it's maybe too late for proactive movement by the NCAA because of litigation pending, but I think there's going to be movement. And it could lead, I don't know where it's going to go, but there's going to be movement in terms of making, trying to balance that equation a little more. Yeah, in favor of the student athlete. A couple more, I'm right here.
Speaking of inspirational basketball teams, my youngest daughter graduated from Loyola Chicago a couple years ago.
Yeah, that was fantastic last year.
Can you explain their success, or is it all just Sister, what's her name?
Sister Jean? No, I'm sure that was part of it. Yeah, but they had good players, good team, experience, tough, won a number of close games. I mean, they could have just as well been out the first round as getting to the Final Four. That's the beauty of the tournament. It's one and done. The best teams don't always advance. You could have an off night. A team could be, it's a number of things. That's part of what makes it one of the great sporting events on the calendar. But they were a good team. They were solid. They had played a tough schedule. And they made clutch plays when they needed to. I think they won 3 of their 5 games, 3 of their 4 wins to get to the Final Four. I think the total margin of victory, aggregate, was like 12 or 13 points. So it's that thin. The gap is closed between the teams in college basketball. The Dukes, Kentuckys are usually younger and far more talented, but a lot of the other teams are older, more experienced, and sometimes in a one-and-done format can close the gap. Guy gets in foul trouble, has an off night on one of the power teams, and you know the underdog is always hungry to make their one shining moment, so that plays into it too. Two more, and then my shot clock will go off right here. I'm sorry.
You mentioned a few times, but just to add on, what about the one and done?
We're heading in. I think we're going to get back eventually. That's an NBA rule.
Yeah.
It's collectively bargained between the NBA and the Players Association. In 2006, when we instituted, you had to be 1 year removed from high school in 19. When those two entities did, it sounded good in theory, but we know everything that looks good on paper doesn't always work out in reality. Like my late dad used to say, everything that shines, son, is not gold. Okay, so it looked good on paper. I thought 1 year of college would be better than none, but you'd have to be fully invested. So we're going to eventually get back to kids being allowed to go straight from high school. And it's a small number. I mean, there's 4,500, 353 Division I schools, say 15 on each squad. I mean, there's thousands that play basketball. There's 60 guys that get drafted every year. 60 that get drafted. It's a small number. There's 20 to 50 that leave early every year, 20 to 70. So it's not a big number. It gets a ton of attention. And I think another pathway for kids that aren't interested in being in college is fine, to have a chance, if they so choose, to stand or fall on their choice. It could be painful. In some cases, it could be catastrophic if kids are out there and they haven't prepared for what might come next. But that's part of what growing up is. That's part of what being an adult is. You look at situations, you evaluate them. But I think we're going to go back. I don't think we can go back before 2021 unless the league and the union elect to do so, because that's when the collective bargaining agreement expires. So I do think we're going to go back to letting guys go out of high school. And if you want to come to college, and you come and commit and be there and take advantage of it. Great, appreciate your attention. Thank you. The president is here, so that means I'm being ushered off stage.
Thanks for being such an inspiration. You know, I called Clark's old coaches back in his life, and they say he's very coachable, so you can see when he referenced that he and I talked last week, what a difference it made. Good job, Clark. Just a tremendous speech, as you were humanistic, as well as the shot clock, the way you announced on games and March Madness, and hopefully we just continue being crazy March Madness about the platform that we have in Rotary to be the inspiration. Clark has a plane to catch. He has a total of 5 minutes. His new shot clock's 5 minutes max. That means we get him out before he was scared that he could leave. So if you have an opportunity and desire to say hi to Clark afterwards, thank you for being an inspirational speaker today. Thank you all for being an inspiration. Have a great week.